follows, there are 3 points worth considering more closely in order to respond to the question, does gender deny the materiality of sex? First, social and material construction, or formation, have to be thought of as interactive and as supported by several scientific frameworks. Second, the distinction between nature and culture that presumes that sex is natural and gender is cultural or social does not work within such frameworks because the relation between the two refuses that very division, a historically established one that needs to be rethought in light of both social theory and science. Third, sex assignment is one place where we can see quite clearly the social powers that operate on bodies to establish sex in reference to dimorphic ideals and an array of associated social expectations. If we think that sex assignment simply names what already exists, we refuse to consider the ways established and obligatory categories describe and form bodies at the same time, and how these descriptive and formative powers can exclude and efface the sexed bodies that emerge in time. To argue that a number of formative powers act upon the matter of sex, including our own self-formative powers, is not to deny sex, but to offer an alternative way of understanding its reality apart from a natural law thesis of complementarity or any form of biological determinism. Let us start with sex assignment and work back to the nature-culture distinction, and then consider the interactive frame in which both social and material construction operate. Some trans-exclusionary feminists have returned to positivism in their opposition to gender, specifying that the denial of the materiality of the body is the same as the denial of the facts of sex. Positivists argue that the facts are the facts, and that only a fool would deny them. Our task, according to their view, is to measure the value of what we have to say against the facts, and to let the facts determine what is right and wrong in our various opinions and theories. Some suggest that gender theorists are suffering from delusions by not relying on the clear observation of the facts at hand. Eyebrows are regularly raised. But what if we are observing through a lens or framework that has cultivated the habits and rules governing observation? Or what if we need to know how the field of observation is circumscribed to know what we are observing, or from what perspective our sight is being directed, if we are sighted? How was that observational field made? What does it not let us see, and how does the non-observable determine, to some extent, the field of the observable? If we agree that ways of seeing affect what we see, John Berger's important point, not only about painting, but also about everyday life, and that there are different ways of observing the body as well as different frameworks within which observation occurs, is the result pure chaos and denialism, or is it the condition of possibility for a more capacious way of knowing? What if those various ways of seeing and sensing are, in fact, laden with presuppositions about the meaning of what there is to be known, such as the idea that dimorphism operates as a sufficient criterion for distinguishing between the sexes, and that the binary relation is always clear, with no other formations existing outside of that frame? How often in seeing the primary sexual characteristics of an infant do we also see, at the very same time, the normative social trajectory of that child, the gendered and reproductive life of the infant's future, its eventual materialization as a girl or a boy, a woman or a man? Those thoughts don't just dawn on us at the time, they are part of the very framework through which many people see, sense, and confirm the sex of the infant. One question is whether sex assignment ever takes place without an imaginative framework, or one that actively helps to craft what there is to be seen. Is the naming of an infant's sex already a defining moment of the adult imagining of that life? The imaginative anticipation of normative gender is already there in the framework through which sex assignment takes place. Positivism, however, has never been able to account for that imaginative and interpretive framework through which facts are determined and valued. At the same time, positivism operates within its own imaginary. It imagines that facts appear as they are, as long as we deploy the best method for discovering them. But what if that method of discovery is also, to some extent, determining what is already deemed valuable to see and name, what value what is observed has for us or should have? No one is denying the facts when asking such questions. No one denies facts when one asks which facts are salient, or even what has made them salient. None of this means that sex is an artificial effect of some framework, or that a framework causes sex to come into being, or that sex is nothing but an interpretation, or somehow composed of linguistic stuff. Rather, it means only that the frameworks that arrange sexed phenomena for us are part of what is observed and named, and that it is not always easy or possible to disentangle the two. It is not only possible to take account of the material dimensions of the body without positivism, it is necessary. Materialism is not positivism, and Marx, for instance, was clear that any form of materialism had to conduct a critique of positivism. For Marx, the social relations that help to organize material reality configure not only the knowable world in a certain way, but also our ways of knowing. Positivism considers the body as a fact, lifeless and decontextualized. But once we consider the lived body, that is, the laboring body or the sexual body, the body that appears for others, the body on the surgical table or the body appearing before the court, then the matter of the body is caught up in social relations and institutions and cannot be known without reference to them. The gendered body takes form within institutions like the family or the workplace, and to extricate it from its defining social forms is to lose its historical definition in favor of a fact, one that is abstracted from lived relations and historical realities.